Hello, everyone. I'm Brenda Combs. I'm one of the SERTAC directors for compliance at Kentucky Valley Education Cooperative. And the reason why we're going over alternate assessment participation guidelines today is that we're finding some issues and we want to correct those. For you all that are new, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Those that are veterans or have been here for a while, they pretty much know to do that. And we want you to talk and ask questions if you have those questions. So especially the you new teachers, I know you don't want to speak. You think some things may seem a little silly, but they don't. Believe it or not, it don't. So to look at our presentation for today, okay, so the first thing here we want to even discuss is what is alternate assessment? Okay, the alternate assessment participation guidelines, we have a regular review that we go by in the state of Kentucky. It's a process that the districts and the state uses just to determine if a student is eligible for the state alternate assessment. Now, not all students are eligible for alternate assessment in the FMD classroom or the MSD classroom or autism or whatever. We have to determine that every year. Each year we have to discuss that. So these are the things that the district and the state uses just to determine if they are eligible. So what does this require? So we have to have an ARC meeting. And we have to go over the document and we have to discuss as a team, not just one person, but as a team, we have to determine the answers to certain questions. So, does a student have a cognitive disability? And do they have a current IEP? And they require extensive instruction, more than the normal special education students, as I should say, need. So they would need a more intensive. So we have to make sure that's documented as well. We'll talk about that later. And then we have to make sure that the decision is made by the ARC meeting and that it's but not based solely on exclusionary factors. And we'll talk about those as well after a while. So when you're looking at those 4 questions for the participation guidelines, those have to be answered yes. And the first no that you get, you just stop because they're no longer eligible for alternate assessment. So that's the reason why it takes a team of us to determine this for the student. We have some key aspects of the record review process. And if you'll notice, the purpose of this is to ensure a consistent standard for determining eligibility for the Kentucky alternate assessment. We have to make sure that we go over those questions and to make sure that we discuss them questions and that we're just not going through there and clicking yes, 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 yes. We have to talk about them. The requirement, a student has to meet all 4 of those participation criteria, those questions. And then the criteria, they involve the student having a disability and again, having an IEP and having significant cognitive and adaptive behavior deficits that require an extensive instruction more than others. And the decision is not based on the exclusionary factors. Documentation. This is the part that we need a little work in. The documentation that we have to write in our conference summary is just about duplicating the participation guidelines, those 4 questions, as well as the evidence that we have to have. And then we have to talk about the learning characteristic inventory, those 12 questions, and discuss the answers. So we have to put that in our conference summary. Even though we've already done it before. I know you say that's redundant, But a conference summary is everything that you talk about in your ARC meeting. So we talk about that. So we have to talk about that in your conference summary. We do this when we do our annual reviews. So whenever we're doing an annual review, whether it's an IEP, a re-eval, or anything of that nature, every year we have to talk about and discuss if the child is determined eligible to participate with the alternative guidelines. All right, so ineligibility. If a student does not meet all the criteria, they are immediately ineligible. Like I told you earlier, the first no, you just stop because they do not qualify for the assessments. So they will take the general assessment in the classroom, but they will have the accommodations that they need that are marked on their IEP. And we'll discuss some of those in a few minutes about the accommodations. We have to make sure those accommodations are discussed in your present levels in your IEP. So that's another thing that we are not putting in there. So we need to start doing that. So we have some additional guidelines and some resources that we have for you all. And I've got some at the end of the PowerPoint. I've got some resources for you that are hyperlinked that you can go in and click on it, and it'll go directly to that document. But parent information, number one, we need parent involvement. The federal, the state, the district, we do need that parent involvement. They need to let us know about their child, what their child is doing at home, what they're doing when they take them out on outings, those types of things. We need to know those kinds of things. They provide us with information for that participation guidelines, those questions. We also need to make sure, and we're not doing a good job of that, about telling the parent the difference between a regular high school diploma and an alternative high school diploma. So sometimes you just have a sentence in there that you have discussed that. Well, that's not what we need to see. We need to see the discussion. We need to make sure that you let them know the difference between the high school classes versus the courses that they take for the alternative high school diploma. So it's credits versus courses. And then the big thing that we need to make sure that we tell them that most employers, they want a regular high school diploma. So for those that have the alternative diploma, that means their employment might be limited for them because they had that alternative high school diploma. That's one reason why we need to make sure that if they are on that track, that they are the ones that are more severe. If we have students that can work, we need to make sure that they are doing that. I've talked with some students that have graduated, and they've even told me that they didn't even attend the meetings, that the teachers just came by and they signed a paper that they didn't know what they were signing. But later on, they found out when they couldn't get a job that they had an alternative diploma, high school diploma. So they were upset with that. So we just need to make sure that we talk with the student as well. We don't leave them out in the dark. And the parents need to know this as well, too. They need to know. And we need to know that before they get into high school, because it's going to be hard for them to try to get credit recovery for classes if they try to change over to the regular high school diploma. We do have parent modules that are on the KDE webpage. They've developed them to assist those parents in better understanding the participation guidelines and other related topics, the LCI, those types of things, because we need to make sure we have our parents on board. Any questions? So there's some additional information we need to talk about, like the data monitoring. We do need to progress monitor. We need to make sure that the students that are on alternate are truly alternate assessment students. We don't want to identify students that do not need to be on that track. So the next little piece there, the 1% cap. So the ESSA requires states to ensure that no more than 1% of students participate on an alternate assessment. in each subject. So Kentucky has routinely requested waivers to exceed this cap. Now, we need to talk about things like this at our school. We need to talk about this as a district as well, because we should not have much more than 1%. Now, if you have a really big district, you may find that, but most of the time it won't be over much. So we want to make sure that we're not over that. If so, we do have to complete a waiver, and it goes into the State Department. So on this one, I put attached a hyperlink for the alternate assessment record review document. This is what we go by when we come into your district and we do an alternate assessment review to make sure that you have all the components that the state looks at. So I put that in there for you, just for you to have that resource. So now we have these module requirements, and some people talked to me and said they had never heard of these. These have been around for years, decade. So what we need to do is we need to make sure that everyone that is involved with the student, and we're talking about special ed teachers, we're talking about your ARC chair people, we're talking about the directors, and of course your principals, your guidance counselors, all those types of things, people that need to take these modules. Now, if you'll notice, I broke them out to where it showed you, like for the new special ed teachers, they've got the 103 and 104 that they have to take and pass. And then for the new ARC chairpersons, we have the module 102. And for our experience or our veterans, special ed teachers, ARC chairpersons, and your DOS, we just take the 201. And then for your new doses, bless your hearts, you have 101, 102, 104, and 105. So you don't have to take 103. But anyway, here is, if you ever need that you've got a screenshot of it, and you could go by whatever you have to take. Here's our calendar window that we have for our alternate assessments. We've already started that. It started on November the 10th. And of course, it will end on December the 19th. And then we have a makeup window that we have, and that'll start on January the 5th, and that will go to March the 20th. So when we start on our window 2, which will start in April the 14th, and it will go to May the 22nd. And then, of course, you have your transition assessment record. It's going to start in October, which has already started, but it will go all the way into May of 2022. And then, of course, the makeup window, that will be coming soon. They've not got that out yet. As soon as that comes, I will send it to your directors for them to send it on to you all. Here are some more of our resources that I felt like you might need. And again, we have the Kentucky Alternate Assessment Participation Guideline Documentation Form. This helps us to fill out this form accurately. It has some good information in there for us to talk about as a ARC chairperson and a teacher, regular ed teacher, special ed teacher, parent. We have all of us in there. We have guidance for our admissions and release committees for participation decisions. And then you'll have your KDE Alternate Assessment Parent Guide. This is a guide that you have to give to the parents. And they would like for you to send that with the notice or prior to the ARC meeting. That way the parent has the time to look over it. If they have any questions, they can ask you at that meeting. So it's good if you do that. And that's one of the questions that you have. The very first one is, did you give that document to the parent? And it asks you when you gave it to them. So we have to make sure that we have all this documented. If you go into, hopefully this will work. Close your eyes. All right, so here is the form itself. This is what I was talking about earlier. It says, you provide the parent with this document, It wanted to know when you did that. So prior to the meeting, during the meeting, or other. And then it also, over here, it asks the date that you provided it to the parent. So we have to make sure we do that, and this has to be marked yes. The second one here, this is talking about that alternative high school diploma versus the regular high school diploma. So even though you can click yes here, we got to make sure in the conference summary that you are talking about it in depth. You have to have that, the courses versus the classes. So we just need to make sure that we have that going on in there, and then talking about the businesses that require the high school diploma. So it will limit those that are on the alternative high school diploma track to get a job. If you have any questions, just let me know. I'm going to keep on going unless you give me a shout. All right, so we start into the questions. All right, so it tells you here, has the student been determined to be a student with a disability? Okay, so we check if they've been determined, and you'll click yes. Okay, then you have to go over here to the right-hand column, and this is where you have to put in the data that's supporting the questions. So you put in the date of the evaluation data. You will also put the disability eligibility form, the date for that. You will also put the IEP date. And if you have any other data that you want to put in there, you can put that in this box right here where it says other. So for those of you all, we have already gone over the first page, but we'll just do like a little brief thing here. So we have to make sure that we give the parents the participation guidelines, and they would like for you to do that prior to the meeting. And then, of course, there's a date there that you have to put the date that you gave that to them, even if it was during the meeting or other. So you have to mark it yes or no. Hopefully you'll mark that yes. I have come in contact with some no's, but I think that was for accident. But the second piece here is talking about discussing that alternative diploma versus your high school diploma. And they don't want to hear the part about we discussed it. We want to hear the discussion. We want to make sure you're saying the 22 or 26 or whatever credits your districts have. Make sure that you had that in there, as well as a discussion on most businesses. They only accept the regular high school diploma. So it'd be limited employment for some of our students. So we have to make sure we had that discussion and document that in our conference summary as well. Okay, I'm ready to go on. Okay, so this is where we start our first question. So it's participation, and it's question number 1. And on this one, it's wanting to know if you have a documented eligibility. And, we say yes or no. We know that they will have some type of documented disability. However, we have to go over to the right-hand side, and we have to put that evidence in there. So we have to put the date for the evaluation. When was that date? When did the evaluation date happen? We also had to put in there when we determined the eligibility. And just a heads up, sometimes we're finding that there's not eligibility forms in the folder, due process folder. So make sure you put that in there. Then we also need to have a current IEP. So we had to put the date of that current IEP. Now they have another box there, and this is where you can put any other information that you feel like needs to be in there that would support the student for having an alternative diploma for the alternate assessment. It also asks you over on number 2, it talks about the IEP. So we need to make sure that we have the IEP and we have it current. And those have to be marked yes. Now, if either of those are marked no, then we stop. So we're going to pretend that we're going to go on. We've already had yeses, so we're going to go on to the next one. Here is your second question. The second question is asking us, did the ARC document the student's cognitive functioning and adaptive behavior in the home, in the school, in the community, across all settings? So here is where we need everybody involved to talk about it. The parents need to talk about it. Like I discussed earlier, they take them on outings. They know what they do at home. They do those kinds of things. So we need their input. It's valuable. Then the second question there is the ARC reviewed current and longitudinal data. So we have to look at that, and we have to look at it across all the settings. And what we're finding is they're leaving out the adaptive behavior part. So we need to make sure that we put that adaptive behavior in there as well as the other part. And again, you look over on that right-hand side and all of that, I know everybody says that's redundant. I have to write that evaluation data 100 times. I have to do the IEP data 100 times. Well, we have to do this because this is a document that's we need to have for the state and the federal government. So evaluation data, we have to, it says required. So anything that says required there, we have to put a date there. If it's not required, we don't have to do that. It's optional for you guys. So again, you have to put the evaluation date, you have to put the IEP date, and a new one, a previous IEP date. So the previous year's IEP date goes in that one. Now, progress monitoring data, it says required. Do not say see progress monitoring. You write the progress data in the box, okay? We don't want anybody have to go back and try to locate this progress data. It needs to be right here on this form. Teacher observations, that's optional, so you can put that in there if you want to. And again, you've got some more boxes that says other, and then some supporting comments that you can put in there as well. Okay, so we're on the number 3. So it says, does the ARC document the student requires extensive individual direct instruction across multiple settings, utilizing intensive accommodations, modifications, and assistive technology to access and make progress on the KAS and maintain the general learning. So this is very important. We're looking here at, when you look at those accommodations on the IEP, we're looking at things that go beyond that. These kids need more. So that's what we're looking at here. These are the pieces that the students that need to have more than just what's on that accommodations form. So we check the box, yes or no. And for those that should qualify for alternate assessments, they're going to have yes. And then again, we go over on that right-hand side and we're putting those dates, we're checking the boxes and putting those dates in as well. So, everything there that says it's required, we have to make sure we put that in there. If it's optional, it's just optional. Now, one thing I didn't talk about is that middle section there. It talks about the responses. It tells you if you mark no, it tells you about all the things that's there. Kind of gives you a little guide. So if you need more help, then you look in this little section right here, and it will actually help you in just determining if you're going to mark yes or no in that box, and then what do we have to have for supporting evidence. It gives us the KARs that go along with that. So for you guys that may be in the MAP program and are doing something in school, we actually had the KARs in there for you all to go by. So you'll have you can go back and look at those KARs and get a better explanation with that. The second question there is ARC reviewed current and longitudinal data across all the settings. So we have to make sure that we're looking at that. And again, this is where we have to have all the ARC members to talk about the student. Again, you will see that middle section there is darkened. This is where if you get confused and you don't know if it's yes or no, right here is where you'd want to go to look for some suggestions and information you would need. All right, so here is participation criterion 4. A lot of times we just say questions, participation question 4, because that's kind of what it is. Did the ARC carefully consider, and it says check as considered each of these items. So we have to go down through there and we have to make sure that we're talking about these things, and we have to consider excessive or extended absences. So if a child is absent a lot, then, they're not going to get that content. They're not going to get the pieces that they need for that alternate assessment. So then the next one says disability related to visual or auditory disabilities. emotional behavior disabilities, specific learning disabilities, speech, and language impairment. Now, when we look at that, we're looking at accommodations that go over and beyond. They may need Braille. They may need the larger letters. You may have to enlarge some things for the students. Sometimes we have to have headphones. We have to have students put in a different place because they need reinforcement for their behavior. They cannot function in a room with a full room of students, so we have to remove them to a certain place. There's different things that we have. Each, it's individualized, and that's what we have to remember. All these are individualized. We have to make sure that they understand English. So, the native language, social culture, and economic differences, when we look at that. And sometimes when they come to us, they don't speak English at all. So it's going to take a while for them to understand our language and to speak our language fluently. Those identified as English language learners, we have a test that we give the students when they come to us because we want to make sure that they are English language learners and not special ed. So we do have some students that are ELL that are also special education, but we want to make sure before we do something. Predetermined poor performance on the grade level assessment. The student displays disruptive behaviors and experiences emotional duress during testing. Lots of times we try to get a waiver for some of these kids that have so much anxiety that they can't take a test. Sometimes you'll put a test in front of those kids and they'll just sling it because it's like they're so frustrated they don't want to see it. They just don't want to do it. So, sometimes we do have to go to doctors and we do have to get some forms and that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to get the exemption. It's state based on the state. So, we don't have any say so in it, but we do have to get an exemption form filled out to turn in. The student displays disruptive behaviors and experiences emotional duress during testing time. Administrator decision. It's not just one administrator decision. It's an ARC decision. Everything we do is an ARC decision, and we can't predetermine anybody eligible for alternate assessment. Educational environment or instructional setting. And then the second one is the ARC's decision for the students to participate in the Kentucky Alternate Assessment is not primarily the result of any of the exclusionary factors that we just discussed. So, and we have to have that language written in that conference summary as well. We actually need to take that number 2 and just copy it and put it over into your conference summary because that's the language that we need for that. The next part, we're talking about eligibility. So the student meets the participation guidelines for the alternate assessment as a student with a significant cognitive disability and is eligible to receive instruction based upon alternate academic achievement standards and participate in the Kentucky Alternate Assessment as indicated above when we talked about earlier. So when we're looking at this is the kind of statement that we need to see also in the conference summary. So, some of you all may have some templates to go along with that. Some directors may have those specific for you, but we just need to make sure that some of this language is in the conference summary because that's where we read and we need to have that discussion. All data sources referenced can be verified with supporting documentation. Everything that we put in here, we must be able to have that evidence, and that's where that right-hand column comes from, is the evidence piece. Just because you write something in there don't mean that it's, yes, no. It may be your opinion instead of the ARC talking about things. So we have to watch what we do, and we don't need to put opinions. We need to discuss it as a team. So documentation questions. The ARC reviewed and completed the learner characteristic inventory. We refer to that as LCI. All the special ed were all acronyms. It's a wonder we don't have acronyms on our birth certificates. But anyway, that's just a joke. But, we have to look at those. There are 12 of those, and we have to answer those as well. And we also have to discuss those in our conference summary. So, the first one here is you're looking at that. we're looking at that inventory, and we're making sure that we have that it documented. So you would mark it yes, and then you would have to go over on the right-hand side again where it says required, and you'd have to put the date. You have to check the box. You'd have to put the date in there that the inventory was given. And just about every time, it's the same time that you're writing your IEP because it's part of that IEP. And again, they're asking you for the IEP, the current IEP that you have to put there. Here's a big piece that we need to talk about. We have to have a communication plan. And where we look at that is we're looking at receptive and expressive language. When you're doing your LCI, you'll notice that there's all types of questions. Some of it says receptive, and some of it says expressive. Written, we have all those written in there. So we have to go through that, and we have to identify that they're expressive and how do they express themselves? If they're nonverbal, do they have some kind of device that they can use? Do they have a picture exchange system going on? Those types of things, because they have to have some kind of communication system so they can communicate to us. If not, they're going to be frustrated all the time, and then they're going to be a behavior problem, and we can't have that. So we mark yes on that, and then of course we have to put in our IP, and I usually would like to see it, and it's not saying that you have to have it here, but I like to see it in the communication section, because if the child has speech, more than likely the speech therapist will write that in there for us. We'll have that. If not, then we refer back to that LCI, and then we pull off where we have the answers there, and we'll see that here in just a few minutes. So if you look here, it's talking about all of these different types of things, the definitions. So you can go through that. I'm not going to read all that to you, but anyway, it's there for you to just read. All right, so here's our LCI. So we're starting those 12 questions that we go over in the ARC meeting. So the first one is students' primary IDEA disability label. So we have to put on there which one that they have. The second question is your student primary language a language other than English? So, we have to answer the question, if they only speak English, you're going to put yes. And if it's not, if they have something other than English, then you're going to put no. And that doesn't mean that you stop right there. That was just the participating guidelines, okay? So we answer all of these questions. What is a student's primary classroom setting? So are they in a special school? Are they in a regular school? Are they in a self-contained unit? We have to discuss all of these things that are in there. And you just pick the one that the student is in, and you check the box. Here is where I'm going to talk about the number 4. This is expressive communication. As I was telling you earlier, we have to have a communication plan. And this is where you can look and you can get part of your communication plan right from these areas right here. So do they use symbolic language to communicate? Are they verbal? Do they have written words? Do they use sign language? Do they use Braille? What do they use? So we have to put that in there. And then uses intentional communication, but not a symbolic language. Students uses understandable communication. So we want to make sure that if they use gestures, if they point, grunt, or whatever they do that gives us the answers that we need, or what they're looking for, or what they want, because their wants and needs is the big piece here. They need to be able to express that. Uses intentional communication is not symbolic language. Student uses understandable communication, just like I'm talking right now. So, that would be part of that. Students communicate primarily through cries, facial expressions. They have changes in their muscle tone, etc. But it's not clear, of their objective, what they want, what their needs. It's not clear. We really don't know. The 5th question is, do your students use oral speech to communicate? So, like I'm doing right now, I'm communicating, I'm using my vocal cords, producing words. So that's that question. Does your student use an augmentative communication system in addition to or in place of oral speech? So sometimes they may have that. Sometimes we have kids that have computers that has different things on the computer that they just have to push, and it speaks up and tells them what they want, those types of things. Technology has been something else here lately, so it's untelling what they'll come out next, but it really works. And if that's what the students have to have, then the student needs to have a computer. Receptive language, this is another one that we were talking about earlier. Independently follows 1 to 2 step directions, requires additional cues. So sometimes we have to give them a little bit more, maybe prompt them. Alerts to sensory input from another person. Uncertain response to sensory stimuli. So that's, sounds, voices, the lighting, the touching, the movement, all those types of things fall in that category. So that's another area, like I said, we need to put in a communication plan, and we can use pieces from that to help you do that. Now we'll go into the motor. So they may not have any motor issues. And if that's the case, then you're going to put that first box. They may have to have some kind of adaptation or some kind of support. So they may be in a wheelchair, they may be in a walker, those types of things. That's what you marked there. Uses wheelchair positioning equipment and or assistive devices for most activities. And then the last one needs personal assistance. So this is where we have our instructional assistants to come in and help with these students with their motor activities. Number 9 is engagement. So do they actually come up to you and initiate with social interactions with their peers, with adults, those types of things? Do they respond to social interaction but does not initiate or sustain social interaction? So they may not start something, but if somebody walks up to them, they may have a conversation with them. Alerts to others and does not alert to others. Then the number 10, we're talking about some health issues. Lots of times their health issues cause them not to come to school. They have to go to the doctor quite a bit. We do have medically fragile kids that we have to look at, and sometimes we may have to write a plan if they miss too much school with attendance. So it's asking you their attendance at least 90% of the day or 75% of the day, and primary due to the health issues. Attends approximately 50% or less of school days in the absence or primarily due to the health issues. Receives homebound instruction due to health issues. Now, here's the piece that I don't know if they knew that was in there or they just overlooked it. But on homebound kids that I review their records, this is not marked. So we may want to make sure that we look at that to make sure that they mark receives homebound instruction due to health issues on this. Highly irregular attendance or homebound instruction due to issues other than health. Number 11 is reading. All right. Do they read fluently when critically understanding in prior or in Braille? Remember, there's multiple ways of reading other than just verbally reading or silently reading. Reads fluently with basic literal understanding from paragraphs or short paragraphs with narratives in print or in Braille. Reads basic sight words, simple sentences, directions, bullets, and or a list of print and Braille. Aware of text Braille, follows directionality, makes letter distinctions, or tells a story from pictures that are not linked to the text. Or you have no observable awareness of print or text. That means that the student cannot do that. All right, the last one is mathematics. And here, can they apply computational procedures to solve real life or routine word problems from a variety of context? Does the computational procedures with or without a calculator? What we try to do is we actually try to see if they can work the process and then when they know the process, sometimes it's hard on them and they have to have a calculator for time constraints. But that we try to teach them the process of whatever we're trying to work with math. Counts with one-to-one correspondence to at least 10, and or makes numbered sets of items, counts by rote to 5. Or do we have no observable awareness or use of numbers? These are the students that should be exempted. In my opinion, they may not get exempted, but in my opinion, those are the kids that need to be exempted from that. So those are the 12 LCI questions. And so when you look at those questions, you need to summarize those 12 into the conference summary. Again, like I said, many directors have a template for this specific thing because this could be 8 pages plus long. And I have read some of y'all's conference summaries, and they were well written, and they are extremely long. But we know the child and understand that. And if you have any questions about any of this, feel free to call me, text me, email me. I'm available. If I'm doing something, a training or whatever, I will get back with you as soon as I can. But number one is we really need to make sure that these students are the alternate assessment students. We don't need to put kids that are not eligible in this program because it will hurt them when they graduate from high school. It means that they may not have a job. For those that are going to a vocational school that are actually in high school right now, should they be on an alternate assessment? If they're going to vocational school, I think they're going to find work. They're going to have a trade. So it would be bad if we did that to a student, and we don't want to do that. We want to make sure that they're productive citizens once they leave us, once they exit school or graduate.
Hey, Brenda, real quick, I have one question, and I'm still on this document that you just finished. Under participation question number 4, right there, number 2, the ARC's decision for the student to participate in the Kentucky alternate assessment is not primarily the result of any of the exclusions listed above, yes or no?
Yeah, those were the 10. Those that are above that we have to check them off.
So I don't understand that statement.
All right, that statement is saying. Okay, so this statement here is saying if it's due to any of those factors that we discussed above, then they do not meet guidelines for eligibility for alternate assessment. If they miss a lot of school, if all those things right in there that we talked about, and if the administrator says they're going to be put on alternate assessment because they're going to give us a novice on the regular test, the high school test or whatever test they're taking. And if anybody has ever, and I know the teachers on here, you all have seen those questions. And I believe if they have to take those questions and answer those questions, they ought to get a high school diploma, a regular high school diploma, because those are rigorous. They are hard. And I'm assuming some of those students don't make distinguished in them all the time either. So, just because a student doesn't do well on an assessment don't mean that you put them on an alternate assessment track.
Okay.
Let's see. And I think Esther had a question. If a student is in grade 14, do we still mention the alternate assessment? Because I did, but wasn't sure if that was right. Okay. So when they're in grade 14, we're looking at transition. That's what we're looking for when they're getting to grade 14. We're looking at the TAR, the transition attainment record. That's what we're looking for with that. However, it's not wrong or right if you say in there that you mentioned the alternate assessment, because they're actually on the TAR. They'll be looking at the transition once they get into grade 14. If the student is 20, if the student is 21, no. I just want to make sure that you put everything that you have in those documents, the participation guidelines and the LCI, in your conference summary, that you write it in there. That's the main piece.
Hey, Brenda, you did a marvelous job. I just want to say, and I just wanted to have you say, uh, in regards to um, this alternate assessment, just give a little bit of backdrop on if we do find a district, or if the state finds a district over 1%, uh, what type of supports that we can offer.
Yes, we do. And Denny, I'm glad he was on here. I did not know he was there, but I'm glad he was. We offer, and I'm talking about we, Denny Paul and I are the compliance people. We're not the compliance police. We're the people. Okay. So don't think we're going to come in there and tell on you and get you in trouble, because that's not our aim to do. Our aim is to come in and to look at your records, look at your evaluations, see if they are eligible for alternate assessment, those types of things. We don't kiss and tell. We just want to be able to help you. But yes, we can come in and we'll look at your IEPs. We'll look at the evaluation of the child to see that the place that was the child was determined to be placed in. Those types of things, and help you all with that. So if you ever need us, you can holler at either one of us, or both of us. It doesn't matter, because we're out here to help you, not to hurt you, but to help you.
Brenda does a tremendous job in this area, and I would encourage all of you to reach out if you have questions. She knows so much about this area of special education, and we're willing to help you in any way we can. And we want you to be, we know you have big jobs, and
Yep.
we both have, at one time or the other, worked in an FMD classroom, and we understand the day-to-day grind that you guys are, and it's a labor of love, and we love our children, right? But when it comes to this compliance piece, we want to be there for you, because we want to ease that burden as much as we can.
If any of the teachers on here need any assistive technology stuff, they can get a hold of me. Will has all my contact info. A lot of our school districts around here recently, well, the past several years, actually have been getting communication devices off me for a lot of these things. And I also have like any kind of seating positions. I have walkers and rollers. A lot of these things, button switches, I have all that fun stuff if any of them need anything like that. And it gives you guys a chance to kind of try these things out. And then if they're needed and you see that they're working in your classroom or for that student, you can write those in those plans for the student. So I just want to say it gives you a chance for free to try things out. And
Crystal, tell them where you're located at.
Oh, I'm here in Perry County, and I actually, our ATRC serves the entire southeastern border, state, all the way from Ashland, all the way down to Somerset, all the way down through there. So,
well, we appreciate you. We do have some districts that are using you.
Yes.
More people need to. You all don't understand. She has a lot of stuff. You might even want to go visit her.
It's really fun if you wanted to come here and see me, because we have tons of things here. We're not just an ATRC. We've got all kinds of fun things for our students, and a lot of the ones around here actually visit the center several times through the school year, and it gives them a chance to get some work-based experience with me, because I do a lot of the pre-ets, so I'm kind of the work-based gal over here. So I put them to work when they come over here. They don't just come in and look at stuff. We work. We learn how to run things and make files for 3D printers, and I have a good time with them. But yeah, if anybody needs any assistive technology stuff, please don't hesitate to get up with me. If I don't have it, I can find one of our other centers that do. But I do have quite a bit of things here. So just let everybody know if you need it. Just let me know.
We appreciate you, Crystal.
Thank you.